Welcome to FTP on Advanced Research Trends in Image Processing. Seeking the blessing of Lord Sri Durvindeshwara and Mahaswamiji. So I Professor D.B. Madhiralli, Faculty of Electronics and Communication Engineering Department, HSIT NIDSOC. Welcome you all to the today's second session of the FDP on Image Processing and Healthcare Perspectives. On behalf of Principal, HOD, staff and entire participants, I heartily welcome to the today's resource person, Dr. Yogesh M. Shelke, sir, Assistant Manager, Ananka, Mumbai. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, and all the participants.
I welcome our beloved HOD, Dr. Ravi M. Medali, sir, to this session. I extend warm welcome to all the participants and my colleagues. Welcome to one and all. So now I feel proud to introduce today's resource person of the session, Dr. Yogesh B. Shelke, sir. Sir completed his Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery graduation from Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Nasik in the year of 2006. Sir pursued Master of Technology with specialization Biomedical Engineering from IIT Bombay in the year of 2011. And he completed Management Program for Executives from IIT Bombay in the year 2014. Sir has organizational award is 2019 Emerging Leaders. It is for displaying leadership attributes in client relationship, team management, and overall contribution among 600 employees. Sir invited as a guest speaker on licensing and technology transfer, valuation of IP and technology in BIRAC Venture Center, Government of India. Sir has published more than 5 papers in the journals, and he worked as a Chief Medical Officer from 2007 to 2009. And he also worked as a patent engineer from 2011 to 2014. And Sir worked as a research analyst in Aranka from 2014 to 2016. And he worked as a senior research analyst in Aranka from 2016 to 2017. So I'm very much lucky to such an eminent personality as a resource person for this session. The brief note, I conclude my introduction speech. Thank you one and all. Now I request to Dr. Yogesh B. Shelke, sir, to start the session.
Okay, so thank you, Professor, and thank you everyone who has joined the today's session, and very warm welcome from my side as well. So I hope everyone can hear me well and they can see the screen. So just to start about my journey in image processing and how basically I got introduced while I was working in clinical setups, and also during my master's project and thesis, where I worked basically on image reconstruction and for Indian patient basically, where we design the models based on CT scan data, and then we customize those models in association with Johnson & Johnson and their laboratory in Mumbai. Also, I have been engaged in leading image device manufacturers such as GE, Medtronic, and their R&D team particularly to identify, to understand the research trends and to understand where they can develop the new product, what kind of algorithms, what kind of clinical needs they can cater in the current market scenario. And recently we have also published our findings on artificial intelligence, then AR, VR, particularly in surgical applications and spinal imaging domain. So that's more or less about my work experience and publications that I have in this particular domain. To start with, what I would also like to know about your background. So what I have done here is I have a small activity where you have to basically, we will be running a live poll here for next couple of minutes just to understand your background, your expertise in this particular area. So now I am sharing my screen, and you have to basically log into that particular page with a specific code and answer a couple of questions so that we as a group we understand what is the level of expertise, what is the background, and what we have worked so far. So I hope everyone can see my screen, and it's mentimeter.com. So what you have to do is basically visit this particular website and use this code to log into our poll, and you have to just click one option like what is the highest academic qualification, either it is a graduate level, whether it is a postgraduate level or PhD and above, so that to understand and maybe I can cater and present the content accordingly. So I hope everyone is able to log in into this particular page. So we have one response so far. So maybe we can keep the window for a couple of minutes open so that everyone can log in, and then they basically can register their interest. So I think few people have not able to find the ID. So I will repeat it. It's a 368494. Okay, so I think we have received the sufficient responses. So I understand 67% of the participant, they are into the postgraduate level, and 27%, which is the second highest, that's 27. Now it has changed to 25, but the most of them fall in the bracket of postgraduate level. So that's I think that's sufficient to understand what what might be interest. So what I'll do here is so we will be running this this entire activity throughout maybe a session to just understand your responses, because what we have understood from this new normal situation during lockdown is sometimes the video and the audio does not work very well for everyone. And we also need to collect the responses from all the participants. So this is something we have found very interesting to collect your responses. So another question that I have for you is related to the medical imaging or processing. If you have worked on any of the medical imaging or image processing related project, maybe as a course project, maybe during your internships, maybe during academic curriculum or something, so you can register your interest. Maybe we can take this for next couple of minutes, and then we can move ahead with the sessions. So I hope everyone is able to see the poll. So meantime, this gets settled. What we can do is we can start with the introduction, and then we can run that poll anytime during once it get sorted. So I'll definitely have that run once we have the things in place. So thanks for joining the session. I hope the earlier speaker in this program has provided the exciting knowledge about the image processing and the research that is ongoing in this particular domain. Since all of us know that image processing is one of the growing research field where many revolutionary ideas and efficient algorithms have been developed over the past few decades. So let me pick from those lines what the earlier session has left. So we will be discussing one of them, promising application area, particularly in the medical imaging today over next 60 to 90 minutes. So objective of this particular session is to provide the details about the end user side of image processing research. So probably in the interest of time, we may not be able to touch base on the engineering or the development side of the application. But the background that I come, I'll definitely keep my focus mainly centered around end user or clinician in this particular session. In terms of basically effectiveness of the research or commercialized solution in real world scenario, how do they work basically? What is that particular thing which is required? what is the clinical value or the benefits which are provided in usual workflow to the clinician by all the research that is undergoing in this particular domain. Why this is essential to develop a user side design thinking before while we are structuring the medical imaging research or developing any kind of prototypes. In this session, what I'm trying to address is to provide you with broad decision-making principle from clinician side. We will also cover the specific use case example once we cover the theoretical part to understand the implementation cases.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Sir, sorry to interrupt you in between.
Yes.
The slides are not moving, sir. We can see only the first slide of yours.
Yeah. So I will be coming to the next slides, and once we have the structure in place.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Objective of this particular session is to provide the high-level overview of current trends and limitation which could be explored. Now, why this is important to understand and clinical context, like why it is important to understand a doctor's perspective while we are researching or developing a solution. So design thinking is some methodology for practical, creative, and resolution of the problem using strategies which we are using during the process of designing a particular research or any kind of solving a research problem. It is increasingly being used in medical enterprises to develop the solution approaches to identify the ambiguous problem, which is the USP for medical problems. Like there is a lot of complexity which is involved. There is a lot of security issues. There is a lot of data on uniformity issues that are there while you design a particular case for medical application or healthcare application. And this is important because what is currently happening is there is a shift from volume to value-based system. Like previously we used to have volume-based system, how much volume a particular hospital or a particular radiologist handle, or how many number of X-rays, CT scan, MRI scan he does, rather than what is now important is to what kind of value that particular X-ray will provide to a physician or a doctor, whether the X-ray or CT scan is able to find the diagnosis on confirmatory basis, or what is the level of confidence that this application can provide to the clinician. That's one aspect. Second point is on redesigning and not just restructuring a application which is used in any other non-medical domain. So it is not about re-engineering a particular product which is used in some other domain like transportation or agriculture or any other sector. So it is completely a redesigning according to the patient-centric nature rather than to just restructure the same approach into the medical images. Third point is there is a fine line between valuable and perfect data. As I mentioned, there is a data uniformity issue when we process that data to develop the models or maybe to derive the insight or analysis. So that's another. So because of all this factor, we have to fully understand and anticipate the clinician need to basically deliver the value and innovate while we are designing any image processing related application or solution. So content of this particular presentation is going to be around broad 4 headers. First, about the value and context of medical imaging processing application, particularly from clinician, how clinicians look at the application, what they are actually looking at when they look at a particular image or when they look at your particular result of a application, and what kind of value it provides them to arrive at a diagnosis. Let's say like the speaker in yesterday's session mentioned something about COVID-19 and the use of maybe imaging technologies in such a scenario. So how much value this kind of technologies would provide to arrive at a particular or definitive diagnosis. So that is something which is termed as a value and context of medical image. Then we will also touch base upon a new application and research frontiers. So what kind of research is basically going on? Which are the different application areas like cardiac imaging? There may be image to basically heart, or maybe brain, or maybe bones, or maybe gastrointestinal or stomach. So these are the different application we will be talking about. I will be particularly explaining a specific implementation case, and then we'll go to the unmet clinical needs. So before going to do that, what we will do is basically we will briefly, for the in the interest of other participant, will briefly brush some of the concepts that are relevant for medical imaging, medical image processing from clinician standpoint of view. So as you can see, this is a very generic flow of image processing system, where you have a acquisition system, processing, and then reporting. Our focus is going to be particularly on segmentation, analysis, and the diagnosis system to basically arrive at a particular conclusion. So to start with the acquisition, so what it means for a clinician basically is it is the preferred method. The clinician prefers a method, and it varies according to the unique benefit that it particularly offers. When I say that, what does it mean? Like, for example, we have X-ray. So it is particularly valuable to measure the attenuation in the tissue, particularly, let's say, for the bones or something of that sort. And a film basically provide a measure of ray attenuation. That's the value that a particular X-ray image provide to a clinician. When we talk about CT, it's particularly advantageous to preserve the topology for, let's say, for bones, or have a better 3D visualization. Apart from that, it reduces the radiation exposure and other benefits. MRI is basically main modality for guided surgeries. So people have found this modality very useful when they have to do like real-time surgeries, or they need some kind of real-time guidance during the surgery, because of the high resolution, and again the ability to differentiate between subtle tissue characteristic, and again because of some good safety profile compared to X-ray and CT. Ultrasound is advantageous in terms of non-invasiveness, cleanliness, because it's and safe in nature. But however, they do have some kind of inefficiency when you try to image a gas-filled cavity such as stomach or a bony structure, because of the inbuilt nature of this particular technology and the absorption related to it. Then other is PET. PET, where clinician look forward for this particular technology, is to basically it is for the vasculature based imaging, particularly the arterial stenosis. Stenosis is basically a narrowing of the lumen, like your pipe gets choked. So that is what is called as a stenosis. So this kind of application, particularly clinician look for the PET imaging. MRI has got its importance when it comes to imaging the moving part, particularly if you have to image a vasculature with or without contrast, like angiography or maybe the central nervous system vasculature. And the last one is fundus photography, which is a fundus-based camera, which is particularly preferred for retina. So acquisition technologies differ as per the preferences and as per their unique advantage in a particular organ. Then comes the second part about the segmentation. So segmentation, basically the way clinicians look at this particular component is to basically what it does is it delimits the object once they are detected. So they do find their value in providing the anatomical visualization of organs such as maybe brains or arteries, maybe cardiac chambers or heart, maybe left ventricle or right ventricle, and liver. And some of the segmentation algorithm like people have worked upon are maybe what we have found is there are algorithms such as k-means, maybe fuzzy algorithms, then neurofuzzy, neural network based algorithms, and snare threshold based segmentation. So these are some of the technologies which are explored in this particular field. So that's about the segmentation and what it means for a clinician. Then a detection, so when we look at for the detection, the clinical value of this particular step is basically to particularly look for a bone growth or maybe a normal organ contours or boundaries. Like let me give you one example of you have a bone growth and it's a tumor. So whether you know whether it's a benign or whether it's a cancer or non-cancer.
Excuse me, sorry for interrupting, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, many participants are telling that to make that this slideshow, sir, please, because it's not visible in mobile.
Okay.
So they are asking to make that this slideshow, sir.
Okay, so I did not check. Sorry for that. Slide is basically, I am currently on slide number 7. I hope everyone can see that.
Yes, sir, it is visible, but they are telling that to do this slideshow, sir. Means it is not clearly visible in mobile, so font sizes they are
Okay.
very small. So
so what we can do, so can we share the PDF that I have shared with you?
yeah, sir, can you press that the present, the whatever the present is there? Yes.
So I think I can do that, but it will basically maybe once I have to flip flop from the other, that might cause some problem.
Yes, sir. Can I do that?
Yeah, I think that should be fine. I think.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Then if you stop.
So I will stop sharing the screen.
Yes, sir.
I hope now everyone can see.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect then, I think.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you.
sir. You can continue.
Okay. We were on slide number 7. So basically, a detection principle, what it means for a clinician is basically, this is something where we don't have a prior knowledge about a location of a tumor or existence of a particular abnormality. Let's say we take a example of bone growth, like I was mentioning. So you have a tumor at bone end. You never know whether it is a cancer or not. So in this case, there is no prior knowledge about what is the image that is going to be there, or to define a organ contour or the boundaries, or maybe the similar growth in your gut intestine tissue, maybe kind of polyp it is called as, or a nodule which is present inside a lung. For example, if you see on the slide, the red dotted line is something which is a nodule within a lung. So this is the kind of detection which comes into the play. because of this particular component. Then can you move to the next slide, the next principle? Yeah, so analysis is basically enable a clinician to arrive at a differential diagnosis based on image patterns. Like when we say image pattern, so basically a particular image pattern will look like, let's say in this is A, B, and C. So that is where the analysis provide its maximum value, either by extending anatomical visualization of a particular tissue or a tumor, I would say, or what it does is basically it allows you to measure a volume of a particular image. Like let's say if you have created a 3D volume, or if you have created a tumor from CT scan serial images, then what is the extent of that particular tumor? Or a vascular stenosis in certain cases, like there is a narrowing of the blood pipe and you want to measure how much it is narrowed. So for that particular matter, what you require is a measurement of a volume, basically. Then in terms of functional measurement, maybe the perfusion defects. So let's say the example of myocardial infarction or heart attack, where your blood does not reaches to the tissue at a very I would say normal rate, and that is where a dye is injected, and then you get defect in the area where there is a pathology or where the pipe is choked. So that's the perfusion defect. It happens in terms of tumor, cardiac, like myocardial infarction or heart attack, or may happen in central nervous system as well. Then third value is in terms of motion. How do you measure the motion between left ventricle or the blood that is flowing inside a artery or aorta? So these are some of the value that a particular image analysis provide to a clinician. Then in the next slide, the next component is basically about the classification. So can you move to the next slide, please?
Sir, is it visible? Next slide.
So I hope everyone is able to see that.
Not yet, sir.
Okay. So basically, the classification is all about using the knowledge database and use comparison with developed atlases. Like there is a database which is already having a number of images, and from that you get deep layers, and from then they are annotated images from where the feature extraction will be there, and then it is basically compared with the set of test images and classify the tissue characteristic based on the pattern, either into normal or abnormal. So that is where the classification and then eventually the diagnosis come into the play. So this is about the basic principles which runs behind any medical imaging or image processing application. So now I will move to the next section, where we will also look at some of the applications which are basically used in the clinical setup. So can you move to slide number 11?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I hope everyone is able to see that. And so basically, it's just a broadly where image-based clinical applications are used. So one area where people are finding lot of value of the image processing application is disease diagnosis, as we discussed earlier. Then there is another area where treatment evaluation, where the image processing is being extensively used. So let me give you an example of treatment evaluation. Let's say a PET or a PET scan, where there is a tumor patient and you have given the radiotherapy to the patient, and you want to basically identify from the images after 10 days how much tumor has grown or how much tumor has shrunk. So that is where the value of the image based recognition and the kind of contour of the tumor you can assess, and whether that particular treatment is providing any kind of relief to the patient. Then there is healthcare management, which is electronic health record, where X-rays and other images are stored from the patient history, and then they will be used for the further evaluation along with your patient history. Like in case of, if I have to give the particular example of COVID situation, so X-ray is not the definitive diagnostic mode of the of this particular disease. So what they do along with X-ray, they combine the laboratory findings as well as your clinical history, whether you have any travel history, whether you have a particular type of fever or cough or maybe other symptoms. And based on that, then they arrive at a diagnosis. So this is where the imaging is providing value to the doctors. Then there are drug research and development, then precision medicine is some other area where people have found that imaging the genes and based therapies. So, and so on. So apart from all this area, so what in the next section, what we are going to pick up is one of the area, and to understand what are the image processing application and how they are implemented in one set of area. Just to give you a glimpse about how to basically implement and whether they are really helpful, whether they do actually add the value for a doctor or not, if yes, up to what extent, and do we really have a real world solution for that? So these are some of the questions. So we will be particularly picking up and talking about the ophthalmology or the eye diseases in the subsequent slide and subsequent section of the session. So let me start with the why ophthalmology. Why ophthalmology is an area where people are finding a lot of value from the image processing applications. So this is the discipline where a ophthalmologist has to look into your eyes to whether there is any disease or not. So there is a very short attention span that he can capture an image manually, like whatever he sees, from that he has to derive a diagnosis of your eye. So that is one thing. Apart from that, it is highly dependent on technology development. Like whenever you visit a ophthalmologist or any doctor for any eye error or something, usually you will find a lot of instrument to measure your eyesight or maybe other problems like your eye pressure or other parameters. So this is highly extensively used in that particular setup. That's second reason. And they have been using a lot of mechanical, electrical, magnetic and acoustic imaging technology for a very long period of time, which gives it a lead advantage in terms of implementing new solutions. So that is the reason why this particular area will have some kind of traction in future. And a proof of that is that if you have heard before some days, Google has actually research on how they are going to identify the images of the retina, and based on that, how they will basically detect the eye diseases. So companies like Google, Microsoft, they are already working on that to identify those patterns and then relate it to your systemic health. Like looking into your eyes or retina, they can tell you what other problems you might have or you are basically prone to, or you might develop it after certain years. So that is the reason we have picked this particular area to share what is going on, what are the research trends. So now I will move to the slide number 12. Yes, I hope everyone can see the font, and it is just an image processing workflow in a particular eye diseases where we have a lot of the more or less similar steps, like there is a data pre-processing, then where you have to basically reduce the noise, then data normalization, then you select a particular feature, extract them, then train that particular data set, validate, and then test. So basically, and in order to evaluate whether you have the right model or not, you basically look at area under curve, then accuracy, sensitivity, what's the sensitivity, what's the specificity. So for those who don't know about it, specificity is something, if you have a, let's say, a disease A, and the test identifies that particular disease very well, then that's the specificity. Then there are other measures like mean square error, mean absolute error, and F1 score. So these are some evaluation technique to identify the model accuracy. So having said that, I think some people have mentioned that they are not able to see the slide. But anyways, the slides, I am anyways covering that particular part during the presentation. So slides are just for the reference, those who are not able to see some of the content on the slides. And you will definitely get the slide after the presentation. So no need to worry about it. The application of the basically the image processing or whatever data we have received from those images. So the trends in machine learning or artificial intelligence has given a new hope to basically look into those technologies, those images again, and provide a practical insight to the doctors. Particularly, the AI has played an important role in image-based disease diagnosis and the treatment. So it is basically maybe a machine learning algorithm or representation of learning, or maybe deep learning or NLP-based application that we are looking at. Also, what basically it provide in Retina is basically classification. The three basic steps, like classifying in terms of detecting the particular disease. For example, similarly, what Google has done is they have detected the diabetic retinopathy. So it is a disease which affects the diabetic patient particularly, and they basically damage your retina, where which is a film where you can see the things and object in front of you. Then diabetic macular edema, it's again one part of the eye, I would say, and a fundus photograph. Then in terms of segmentation, what has been explored is segmentation of vessel in macula. Macula is again a bright spot in your eyes, or optical cones. And prediction, in terms of prediction of a disease outcome, or whether you will get that particular disease in certain ages or maybe after certain year. So that's the broad idea about how the workflow works and what is the advantage of it. Now I will move to the next slide, where basically we will talk about some of the databases that are currently used for this kind of application and training the data, or maybe the identifying the data. So the segmentation part, basically, so there are open databases which derive the basic pathological feature around the retina, or it's a part of the eye which basically lines the globe of the eye. Then choroid is another layer in the eye, or sclera. Sclera is the white thing that you see in your eyes. So that's the sclera. So that's about the various features and various layers. So what people have done is they have developed the databases to basically identify and store the information by segmentation. And previously it used to be done by manual method, but now what people are doing is they have been using the refined deep learning algorithms to do that. So these are some of the specific databases for, let's say you have a diabetes retinopathy database. If you are looking for open database to identify or the feature extraction, or maybe you are looking to train a model. So Drive, Stare, ImageNet, and Messidor are some of the very specific data sets which are publicly available. Then you have a data set related to the optic nerve or the glaucoma. Optic nerve is the nerve which starts from your eyes and goes behind into your brain. So if you want to image or take a photograph of that particular area, then there is a database. DRION-DB is there, RIM1 is there, which basically provide you that easily available data set for the segmentation. Apart from that, if you go to the next slide, what I have done is I have provided other data sets and what is their specific clinical application. When you look at I would say the objective, like if you want to particularly look at the blood vessel and it's a segmentation, like you want to see what's the blood vessel pattern inside the retina or the eye layer, and if there is any blood vessel abnormality or develop a model around it, then Drive, Stare are some of the good databases. Optic disc detection, again you can use the Stare for that. Also there are 5 other databases which are mentioned here for particularly for the diabetic retinopathy, which are dedicated to collect that particular data. Apart from that, there are other diseases such as diabetic macular edema. It is another name of the disease where you find a collection of the water or the serum or the fluid below the scleral layer or below the retinal layer. So I hope everyone is aware of now, like what is sclera, what is retina, at least in a very layman terms. Then again you have particularly microaneurysm or if you want to image a vessel, then there is a database called as Retinopathy Online, and there are 2 other databases which specifically image or provide the data segmentation related to the nerve head. That is the central cup shape basically region which can be imaged using or maybe you will find those data set on these 2 databases. So that's about the open available databases and their USP. Like if you want to build a model or if you want to segment a particular image or use it as a training data set. So these are some of the databases for your references. Similarly, what you can also have is the databases or the easily available online resources for other organs, such as there is a database for cardiac or heart, there is a database or there are certain databases for central nervous system or brain. So we are only focusing on the eye diseases or the ophthalmic diseases here. So can you move to the next slide, please? Okay. So
slide number 15, right, sir?
Yes, slide number 15.
Okay, sir.
What is the another area in the ophthalmology? Like once you've done the segmentation, you have the databases. Then there comes the another step, which is a classification of the image. So it's currently used like using computer vision or kind of pattern recognition basically. And recent advances in deep learning technique have basically greatly facilitated the research of this image classification. So basically, there are again a couple of databases or the network that we have identified. Like there is a AlexNet 21, where they have basically 8-layered convolutional neural network. I think it's a 8-layered convolutional neural network for the visual recognition basically. And they do also have GoogleNet, which provide you with the neural network for 22 layer. Then there is a VGGNet, which provides 16 to 19 layers. So as you move ahead with number of layer, the kind of accuracy and the features that you get gets increased. So basically, it's increase in accuracy in a very broad term. So that's about the processing part and some of the key differences what you might require when you want to work on a particular ophthalmic application, and similar applies to the other application. So I will take a pause here and just check my comment section if there are any comments for me. So there was one comment related, slide not visible. Okay, so I think we have taken care of that. And then slides are not visible. I think most of them are on the slides, I think. Anyways, that is that ends the second part of the what I wanted to cover. Now what I'll do here is I'll just briefly check if I have my Mentimeter in place. Just give me a couple of minutes. I'll just see if that works. And basically, I will also try to identify if apart from ophthalmology, are there any particular areas or project that you guys have worked, identified, or have exposure to. So just give me 2 minutes. I will check that. I think we have yes. Yes, so I think I have the results for earlier poll. Anyways, it has recorded, so I will take the control and yeah, just.
So can I stop sharing
Yes,
the
yes.
slide?
For a couple of minutes, you can stop sharing. I have a poll results to show. I think they are populated now.
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay, okay, cool. So Mentimeter, yes. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So this was the earlier result, what you guys have voted. So I calculated 13 responses. So medical imaging related experiences, most of them falls under below 5 years. That's fine. So I believe the content is pretty much useful to the audience. Next thing, what we are going to do is, as I mentioned, like if you are aware, have worked on any kind of area, so please do click and do share these things. So this is the next question that's up, and we will just try to collect the responses in next couple of minutes. I hope everyone can see the screen. The question is, are you aware of any clinical application, particularly for image processing? Or have you worked upon that? You can just name the organs like eyes, heart, maybe central nervous system, then small intestines, maybe bones. Some of them might have worked. Okay, so someone has asked me for a code, so what I will do is I will share the code, and I will just put the link as well for your ready reference. Okay. So I hope everyone can see the screen and can vote on this particular, just to understand if there are any other applications areas where you think that this particular segmentation or the similar approaches can be used. Okay. So I have two responses. People say that they have used DEXA images, cool. Femur bone they have used, ECG signals they have used. That's great. That's great. Then people have said brain MRI images also they have used. Then ECG signal, retina. Some people have right. Okay. Eye. Some people have written. Blood vessel, that's again a good application, particularly if you want to image a let's say there is a blockage in a pipe or the blood vessel, so you can image the live or the real-time stricture or the volume of the blockage. So that's again a very interesting application of imaging. Okay, somebody has said brain MRI images. Okay, so it's coming twice. Anyways, most of them have worked upon either bone, either eye, then either central nervous system, then ECG signals, mechanical. Okay, blood vessel. Okay, that's great. That's lot of, I would say, lot of diversity. Mechanical part I could not understand, but that is something which I would love to know. Then MI's database use. Okay, I have to check this. Material VR. Okay, they have used for non-medical applications such as material VR. Material VR, I think it can also be used in, I believe the same principle might apply in if you want to see if there is any implant VR or something like that. Material VR again. Okay, mechanical. Fine. I think we have received sufficient responses. So let's keep it open for another minute or so, and then we can just share the poll results. Okay, so some people have already, I think that's sufficient. We have around 8 people who has voted. Okay. Is it getting? No, I think we have the result. So I think everyone can see it. So most of the people have answered it correct, like ultrasound images. Oh, this has come again. Ultrasound images. Yes, definitely it can be used. ECG, every answer is correct. A couple of them are very brief, so I assume they are into the medical context, like material wear and mechanical. Yeah, I think these are pretty much the good application of any image processing research that undergoes. Good, great. I think we have understood and we know where it can be used. So let me move to the next section, which is the last, where we will specifically talk about the retinal application or the diseases, and if there are any implemented models, and what is it what kind of accuracy, what kind of sensitivity it is being provided, what kind of acquisition technology has given a good set of results, so that whenever next time you imagine to work on any of such ideas, you will have some reference to fall back. So can you share the slide number 17, please?
Yes, sir. I will, sir. I will.
Sure.
Sir, can you stop the presentation?
Yeah. I have stopped presenting, and yeah. So what we have done here is we have basically touched base upon the three most common diseases in eye. Like most of you might be knowing, cataract is the most common disease that appear in the eye. Then there is a diabetic retinopathy, which is again a very common disease for the people who are suffered from diabetes or sugar. And then there is a age-related macular degeneration. Macula is a one part in the eye. So once I have those slides, maybe I'll be able to explain it better, like where does it look like, how does it look like in a normal scenario, how does it look like, what does an image look like in a disease scenario, and how basically it can be interpreted using a model. So let's start with one first application, that's I think, yeah, so this is first application implementation case about how do we basically use a image processing or deep learning technology to identify retinal disease which affect the diabetic patient particularly. So what happened in this particular case is this is your retina. Retina is once you see through your eye aperture or the lenses, then you find this red disc where you have this yellow spot, which is called as optic disc or the macula, and around that the rays falls and you get the vision out of it. So that's a very layman and broad term to understand and start with. So whatever the red lines you see, these are the vessels or the arteries which provide the blood to the retina. So this is how a particular image look like when you have to look for a particular application or any standard image. So this particular image is for a patient who suffered from the diabetic retinopathy. What is the characteristic feature, or what kind of feature you have to look for to extract is one is microaneurysm. So microaneurysm, these are the yellow kind of dots which basically provide any abnormality within your small vessels or the pipes. So this is the one feature that is particularly looked in those models. Then you have soft exudates, which is nothing but a like swelling inside the layer. Then hard exudate, which is more or less yellow area, which distinguishes itself from the periphery, and it is yellow in color. So the feature extraction basically gives you that contrast about identifying that particular area from the normal tissue. So that's the third feature. And the fourth is basically the vasculature and the changes around it, like you get some kind of hemorrhages. Hemorrhages is nothing but bleeding inside your eyes, like the red dots or the cotton wool like structure. The way it is like, it looks like a cotton ball with red color. So that's the hemorrhages. So these are the very typical peculiar findings that you have to basically extract, or the features that has it's suggestive of a diabetic retinopathy. Now, can you move to the next slide, where basically what exactly this particular model look like is either it look for a widening of the vessel, that's the microaneurysm in technical terms, then it look for the blood extrusion, that's called as a hemorrhages, then it look for a swelling which is called as exudate, then either it look for a cotton wool spot, which is your hemorrhagic structure. So these are the main findings. In the next slide, if you move, yeah, this is the slide number 17, where basically this automated method, basically they take those images as an input and they identify or look for these 4 characteristics. So what are the current trend in this area? So we found this interesting recent researchers. One is Gulshan and its team. Then there is a Ting et al. And its team, and there is Karmani and its team. So basically what they have done is they have applied a deep learning algorithm technique to detect the diabetic retinopathy, particularly in fundal photographs. And they have validated around a set of around 9,000. Gulshan has, I think he has validated around 10,000 images and a good accuracy around 90% in terms of sensitivity and specificity. So that's what they have achieved so far. The another model which is developed by Tinge, so it achieved a accuracy around 90 to 91, 92% around, and specificity around 100 or 90, around 97 to 100%. So that's what they were looking at. And the third researcher, Karmani and its team, basically, so they have used a other approach like optical CT or OCT, that is called as. This is a very peculiar technique used for the retinal images. And with this particular technique, what they have done, they have used a good acquisition technique, also a deep learning algorithm to basically automatically segment that optical coherence tomography images, and accuracy in this around 98% with sensitivity around maybe 95 somewhere around. So that this is one of the very good model to refer. Because the OCT is one of the gold standard to image the retinal tissue. So that's about what is going on, what kind of approaches they have used, and what is the accuracy, clinical accuracy so far achieved. In terms of, if you look at the commercial angle of this particular technology, so as of now, there are only 2 applications which are approved by regulatory authority in US FDA. So one is into the AI diagnostic system, which is approved in April 2018, and it's a IDX-DR, so diabetes retinopathy detection system. And the critical value or the main advantage what it has been claimed is it reduces the workload for a clinician, for a doctor to look into a particular eye or diagnose a patient even from the remote location. In conditions such as present, like if there is a patient who is 400 kilometers away from a doctor, they just have to click a photograph and then it can be transmitted using telemedicine. And in this way, basically this solution is minimizing cost as well. So this kind of value has to be considered whenever any particular prototype or any particular research is coming into the commercialization. So the reason why I mentioned this is a good example to look at the design principle from a user perspective. Like it has added value for a doctor to either by reducing a workload, either by reducing a cost. And also it is good on the accuracy front, because if you observe a retina manually, it definitely the observer bias is going to come into the play. So this is one implementation case where diabetic retinopathy and its related model have been explored. Can you move to the next slide? There is another disease which I want to cover. That's a glaucoma. So glaucoma is nothing but you have a eyeball and the pressure inside, and there is a drainage system, and it gets blocked. Because of that, there is an increased pressure inside the eyeball, and which leads to irreversible damage, vision loss, and the blindness. So basically to your optic disc or the fovea and the region around in it. Why this is very important? Because this is the second leading cause of the blindness worldwide. So first cause is basically the cataract, and the second is glaucoma. So this is very commonly occurring condition where if you see on the left side, this is your normal retina look like, where you have this yellow spot which is written as on. So this is your optic nerve which goes directly to the brain, and if you take a photograph or an image using a device, you get the normal vessels, then you have the yellow retina, and then FOV, that's the fovea. Fovea is a point where the acuity of the vision is maximum. So in glaucoma, what happens, everything gets basically pressure, increased pressure, and then you get a cupping. So this feature, so what people have done, so they have used a number of images to basically model this particular feature around the cup and then around the foveal region. Also, if you see, there is vascular constriction. The vessels are very thin compared to the normal vessel. So these are some of the features that are explored in the models that are used for the automatic segmentation and diagnosis of the glaucoma. So what's the research trend in this particular implementation case? So if you go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, like this is the very common disease, and yeah, even people have expected that there will be 79 million people who will be affected by 2020. So that's the estimate people are working. So any solution which is catering this use case is going to eventually be used for this particular application. Then what is going on in this particular case, people have explored two types of model. One is directly through the deep learning models, and second is basically what they do is they segment the glaucoma related tissues such as optic disc and optic cup, and then they on top of that they calculate the medical measures such as cup to disc ratio for diagnosing, because that's the sensitive ratio which gives you the proper idea about how much pressure and how much extent of the damage that tissue has received. So that's about the clinical value of it. Again, it is useful for prevention, somebody who is not aware of this particular condition. So this has provided a value in your preventive checkups. Or maybe some people have developed a mobile-based applications to self-checkup or so that people can have their own photographs and then they can check whether they are having any symptom of this particular disease. So this is more or less on the preventive side of it. So that's the clinical value this application are providing as of now. I think I'll move to the last application, and then we will have a couple of slides to just wrap up for the discussion, or if there are any questions around it. So this is the last condition, which is age-related macular degeneration. So there are two types of diseases. One is dry AMD, which is age-related macular degeneration. So this is usual image which is processed after the segmentation and pre-processing. So what does it shows? A feature around the pigment clamping, like you get a contrast compared to other retinal tissue. That's one. Dresden is another feature, which is basically, if you see below, there is degeneration of the tissue and it is ununiform. So this is the feature that people look when they have to image this particular segment or have to build a model around this for this particular disease. Then there is a geographical atrophy. Atrophy is nothing but shrinkage. So if you see the tissue and there is a depth in the left photograph, This is a cross section, by the way. And then on the right side, if you see, there is another variant of this disease where you get the dark spot, which is called as a subretinal hemorrhage. So basically, it is nothing but a bleeding inside your eye, and the blood gets accumulated, and this is the image pattern that will be observed once you extract that particular feature. So this is about the kind of model and what feature can be looked into this particular disease. Can you move to the next slide? So in this particular section, why this particular model is very much important is the treatment of this particular disease is based on one drug called as VEGF therapy. So it basically provide it augment the vessel to shrink and further reduce the growth of that particular retinal pathology. So once you have that OCT image, which is optical coherence tomography image, and then you take the apply this particular model, then you can basically monitor the effectiveness of the treatment. So this is the clinical application where these models are being used. What are the recent trends? What people have explored is basically, as I mentioned earlier, there is a deep learning based framework for screening the patient who are above age of 50 years for either age-related macular degeneration, then for Dresden or DME feature. So basically, you have to look for and use this as a screening app or a platform to screen all the healthy individuals or the patient above the 50 years. So that's one. Second is basically with the help of Moore Eye Hospital, what they have done is they have used OCT images to scan the different regions to basically identify those features. And the kind of value that it provides is basically it tells an individual whether they should approach a doctor or not. So that's the value it is providing in current clinical setups. So this was the last case, implementation case, how image processing has been basically transforming the eye diseases, particularly the most common ones we have covered. So there are others which you can find on the next slide. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is a other list of diseases. First column, like these are the name of the diseases. What are the other deep learning technology people have still explored so far, and that's the references basically for your additional information, like what are the other areas and what are the research gap where we can think of, or what are the research model that we can come up with as maybe project or maybe as a prototype. So that just an additional information for those who are interested to know more about it. Then moving to the last 2 points about, we talk about how does it work, we talk about where it can be used on a very broad level, we talk about where it can
Sir? Hello, sir. Due to technical issues, the sir got disconnected. So I request participant to hold on.
Hello, Vijay sir. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Reena madam is saying she can't hear. What is the problem? Please answer, sir.
Sir?
Yes.
Reena madam, she is saying she can't hear. What is the issue?
Sir has been disconnected, sir. So
No,
the
that is
sir joined.
okay. Madam is telling she is right. In chat box, she has message. Just have a look at it. She can't hear.
Yes, sir. Sir just not disconnected, sir, due to
No,
technical
I know
issues.
it's right.
Now they are.
Okay. Is got added up, no?
Okay, okay, sir.
Yes. So I think everyone will be able to hear me.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, yes. I can hear you guys well. Can you hear?
Sir, voice is breaking, sir. Yes.
Okay, okay. So let me try it.
Now
Maybe
it's clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I am pretty much done from like what I have to cover. There are only two slides where I think can if you can that provide the overall conversation around this technology to next week.
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
Okay.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, am I audible to you?
You are audible.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, your voice is not clear, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes. Is it audible now?
Yes, yes, sir. It is coming, sir, now.
Okay, perfect. That was the pretty much thing what I wanted to cover here. Okay, so there are only two slides where basically what I wanted to convey is in this particular area.
Sir, it is not audible now. So voice is breaking, sir, in between.
I think there is some issue with the connection. Is it better now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. I think
Okay.
what I wanted to cover is only two facts around this commercialization of this technology. Is so far there are only two devices which are approved from the regulatory authority in this technology. Like there is a device IDXDR for what we mentioned is for the diabetic retinopathy, and there is another device Which.ai, which basically for associated to analyze the images. So this is a very nascent kind of application where FDA is still trying to regularize and finding the way to giving the approval to the software as a medical devices. So that's the one part of it. And the last slide where I wanted to share is about the research limitation of this technology for a clinician. So that's the last slide. So first thing is, although we can state that whether the tumor is benign or malignant, or we can classify them, but still these models are not able to explain the what would be the reason why this particular finding has been observed in a particular image or segmentation has given this result. So that's one limitation where research is still unexplored and we do not know answer for that. Second thing is diagnosis of rare diseases is still not possible with these image processing models since the data set is very small. Then third thing is regarding the uniformity of the devices to take the photographs and the images, because that is something which will again affect the quality of the image and the kind of feature that would be extracted. So these are some of the open-ended issues where the research is still unexplored, and it can help to basically commercialize this technology and come into the mainstream. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And just to summarize, what we have learned is basically the aspect from the medical imaging side, then look at the typical image processing system, then look at the applications of the medical image processing system, particularly for the eye diseases, ophthalmic diseases. We took the 3 implementation cases and how they are performing, what are the different methodologies, then and what are the still open question or the research question that still can be addressed. So this is pretty much what I wanted to cover in 1.5 hours. So if someone has any thoughts or maybe questions, we can just share the thoughts. I will keep the phone now mute.
Sir, Dipti madam is asking that best source to know disease pattern of particular disease.
So the databases, so if I understand, the question is regarding to the databases, right? The where are the sources and which are the open source image repositories, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, okay. So couple of them I have provided. Like if you go to the presentation, you will have it as a reference. So there are where I have mentioned the name of the repositories and databases, and the particular application or the a kind of model. Like if you want to go for optic nerve related feature extractions, or if you want to go for a diabetes related feature extraction, or maybe the macular related extractions. So these are the specific application that I have mentioned. This is particularly for the eye diseases. Similarly, you may find other databases which are online university image repositories as well. So there are plenty. But in this presentation, I have kept it. I have provided for the ophthalmology. Maybe we can take it offline to find out for the other organs as well.
I request the participant to ask the question if you have any doubt.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I would like to know if there are any specialized softwares for medical image analysis, apart from MATLAB or working on those.
So MATLAB is one which is even I found it very useful for the there are a couple of them, but they are either paid or maybe university paid. I have come across, but MATLAB is best what I found.
Sir, your voice is not audible, sir.
So I was referring MATLAB is something which I have found good for the extraction and other processes. There are other, but they are either paid. Yeah. So there was one which we used in orthopedic imaging. So you can try that. That's a Materialize company. So they provide this particular imaging and segmentation feature functionalities around it. Yeah.
Dr. Thorse sir
So
is
we
asking.
have another question from Datta Prasad Thorse. Okay. So what he's basically asking for, what some strategies in choosing dedicated hardware for medical imaging, medical image processing. So if to my knowledge, basically the good characteristic of the image processing is as I mentioned in the acquisition section, is first it has to be patient less risky, like the ultrasound or the MRI or what I say in some cases even the CT scan. The radiation is first factor that needs to be considered one. Then morbidity and mortality of the patient, like it should not be capital heavy setup like the MRI machine. It has to be portable. That's one. And third thing, if that could be wearable or it is a user friendly design. So these are some of the aesthetic side of it. Apart from that, the high resolution, then signal, the hardware which are basically having a good resolution are good. Like I mentioned about the equipment to capture the images is one of the area where they have a limitation due to the basically the equipment that are used to acquire those images. So they're working on standardization of fundus images and the cameras that are used, but that's still work under progress. So I have another question from Mahadev Swami. So he asked me about, can we create a database of ECG for speech recognition? So yes, that is something which is possible.
we can, that's a good idea actually. And people are working upon this particular feature. If you check some of the good universities research publication, you will find the people are working upon the audio characteristic, and based on that, how basically they will characterize a cardiac rhythm or not. So that's something which is ongoing, and there are certain products which are in the market as well, who are leveraging this database.
Are there any centers like where we can go and collect the data, create the database of EEG for speech recognition, sir?
There are couple of one is regarding MIT. I have heard like they have been working on one of the models.
Okay, sir.
And they have created that database. So that's the one that comes to top of mind. But definitely there is work going on, and you will definitely find more than apart from it.
Thank you, sir.
The last question is there, like, is there any device to recognize type of cancer from Snehalata? So yes, Snehalata, there is plenty of work which has gone into this. So what I understand from a device, so you are looking at image-based device, right? Like if I can give you example of identifying a cancer, skin cancer from photograph, a plain photograph, like whether it's a melanoma, a type of cancer, skin cancer or not. So that's something people have already explored, even for the gastrointestinal tract. That is again based on the endoscopic findings or endoscopic photograph. You can detect whether that's cancerous growth or not. So that's very much explored area, and we have a couple of commercialized products around it.
I hope now I am audible.
Hello. Good evening. This is Dr. Ravi Adali.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, I think I am audible now.
No. Your voice is
Okay.
it's not audible, sir.
Okay, just give me just 1 minute, sir. Hello. I think I am audible now.
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, please go ahead. Sir, you were saying something.
I think Dr. Ravi Adali said wanted.
Yes. I think he was sharing some views, I guess.
No, it was regarding your voice output, sir. Nothing else. Vijay sir? Vijay sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any
Yes, yes,
questions
sir.
we can just ask on behalf of
Okay.
parents. Otherwise, please allow the participants to ask themselves, sir.
Okay, sir. So I request if any questions are there, you may ask that.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Deepthi here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir. If I have a set of images like chest images, so whether it is affected by a disease or whether it is not affected by a disease, this confirmation, if I want to get me, that has to be done by a doctor.
Right, you're right. So the process previously used to basically validate the image segmentation and the feature by an expert. So that's the routine process. And if even if you go to the all the methodologies of the models, you will find that they, for the test data set, what they have done is they have validated those images from the number of expert to avoid the individual bias as well. So they do first, they do verify it with the expert for training data set. And then what they do is to remove the personal bias, they panel number of expert. So the case study which I explained in diabetic retinopathy, so they basically empaneled 7 different ophthalmologists in United States to verify the feature extracted.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from the participants?
I think on the chat side as well, I could not see anything. So before we basically depart, what I would like to have is from the audiences, if we can have the quick feedback about their learnings, or maybe they can score this particular sessions. So that's the last activity for the day, and then we are good to go.
That I will share in the group, sir. Feedback regarding feedback.
Yeah, we can do it online as well. That's not a problem, because I think we have the connection up now. I hope everyone can see my screen, but just let me give 1 minute. Otherwise, we'll share it offline. That's not a problem.
Okay, sir.
Yes, so you guys might be able to see the screen. Just let me reset the result. Yes. Yes. So I think I have shared. Yeah. So you guys can just, as you find the time, you can just, maybe we'll collect the feedback in next couple of minutes, and then we can conclude. Meantime, I'll just check if I have any further question for me.
Sir, can we conclude now?
Yes, I think we are done. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, everyone, and to attending this session. So I think we have overrun time as well.
Okay. Good evening, one and all. So it's a time to offer the vote of thanks. So on behalf of management, the principal, HOD, and participants, so I thank Dr. Yogesh Shalke, Assistant Manager, Aranka, Mumbai, for the topic sharing for the information about image processing and healthcare perspective. Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. Thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for organizing this and participating.
I take this opportunity to thank our beloved HOD for their presence. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I sincerely thanks all the participants for their active participation. Thank you, one and all. So I will share the feedback. We will share the feedback link in WhatsApp group once again. So thank you, one and all.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.